Hello, 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 all, and welcome to Morning Flame, where every nugget from God is like a new, refreshing day and it puts a little burn in your soul. It's a beautiful experience. My name is Andrea. I just want to thank you all for tuning in and joining in. So, I just found out today is Women's Day. How awesome is that? So, with that being said, I thought, who is someone in the Bible, what woman that I would like to put on display right now? And Queen Esther came right to mind. So, for those of you who don't know her story, I'll give you a little bit of the back version. And for those of you who do, just know that your opportunity could be arising. Don't miss your blessing. And don't think that if you let time pass, that you may, basically, how do I want to say that? Just know that if you have an opportunity and it arises and you need to speak up for it, just do it. And just know that there could be negative consequences to you and your home if you don't. It's that simple. We have to start seizing opportunities, taking risks, and understanding the power of the risk when you have God on your side. You can't fake that. You can't negate that. So anyways, so I'm giving away too much of the story already. So Queen Esther, how did she come to power? Who is she? What happened? So it starts, Esther is a book in the Old Testament. And there was a time where there was a king, his name was Ahasuerus, and he was ruler, and he had thrown a party. He wanted to show his riches and his glorious kingdom to everyone, and he basically had made a huge feast and invited many nobles, many people to come in and to party with him. So he threw a big party, basically. That's the short of it. So there came a time where the king was just saying to himself, well, what else can I show off, right? So his wife. Why wouldn't you want to show off a beautiful wife that you have? So he tells one of his servants to go and get Queen Vashti. And Queen Vashti thought, ugh, I am not going to be a display for him and his drunk friends. Could you imagine? So she's basically saying, absolutely not. She says no to the king. First off, I don't know what year it is. I don't know what time it is, but I just know it was back in the day, right? Where you probably are not supposed to say no to your husband, and especially not the king. So she goes back, the servant goes back and says, she said she's not coming. King gets mad, of course. He's infuriated because now he's been embarrassed by his wife, and he's the king, and he came to show everything off, and this is just like the ultimate blow, right? So he gets with his counselors and he advises them, what should we do with the queen? Well, Queen Vashti, he says, hey, you know what she's going to do? All the men and this is what his advisors say, all the husbands, if you don't do something, all the husbands, the wives are going to take over the husbands. And I'm sure a lot of men would probably think that that's happening now. But yeah, all these women, they're going to start disrespecting their husbands. So you need to make sure you make a show of this, that this is not acceptable. So Queen Vashti gets kicked out of the kingdom. Can you imagine being queen to becoming a nobody? Yikes. I just couldn't imagine it. When I was sitting there trying to think about what that scene looked like, being kicked out of the palace, no longer queen. So anyways, that's Queen Vashti. And King Ahasuerus, then he's moping and he's all sad. He doesn't have a queen because now all the friends left, everybody left, and he doesn't have that nice little warm body to lay next to at night. I don't know how they slept in the palaces back then. But truly, so he didn't have his wife anymore. So his advisor said, hey, let's find you a fair virgin, a fair maiden virgin in the land who you can replace Queen Vashti. And of course, he was down for it. And this is where Esther comes into the picture. Esther was a devout Jew. She loved the Lord. She was being raised by her uncle Mordecai. And she was beautiful and she was a virgin. So she got taken into the palace for the beautification purposes, for the beautification process to proceed. And so as she's in her beautification process, she gains the love of like the people who are taking care of her. She was given 7 maidens to be at her beck and call. Like the people who were running it, they just loved her. Basically, she was just shown favor. She had probably a very beautiful spirit with her, right? That's what I imagine, to say the least. So the beautification process is over. All the fair young virgin maidens are taken before the king. And who does he choose? That's right. He chose Esther. And she didn't even want to put on all of the adornments. She wanted to go in pretty simple. She just was, I just imagined her to be like just this breath of fresh air. It'll be interesting to meet Esther in heaven one day. But yeah, so she took Queen Vashti's place. So literally, she went from being, I wouldn't say, I don't know what her social status was, but whatever it was, she went from that to queen. So that's pretty significant. That's huge. Could you imagine if I was like a fair young virgin and all of a sudden someone came and I was living middle class and even high class, but then to go into the palace and be chosen to be queen? Man, I would be feeling pretty, I was going to say, okay, so the pause was, I was going to be like, bye, James, but I think they were for fair young virgins, so they weren't taking us old ladies who had a bunch of children and stuff. And that's okay. So Queen Esther is now in this position. So now she's in position. Nothing has happened nothing significant has happened, really. You know, she's in her position. She gained the king's love. He just loved her. She's married to him now. So now, remember, her uncle was Mordecai, who was raising her. He worked at the gate of the king's palace, I believe. And the king had, his right-hand man was Haman. And Haman, when he would pass by, everybody outside would bow to him except for Mordecai. He was a Jew, and he believed you only bow down to God. So he didn't bow down. Well, this aggravated Haman to the point where he set out a divisive plan to get all the Jews eradicated from the land. He went to the king. The king doesn't know. Oh, what I should tell you too is Esther never revealed that she was Jewish. Her uncle told her, don't reveal it. She never revealed it. She never said anything about it. I don't think race was a check mark on the box there for these fair young maidens, so it wasn't really an issue. So she never revealed it, right? So moving forward now Mordecai, Haman, who's the king's right hand, is ready to go after Mordecai, but not just Mordecai, he's taking them all out. Maybe others didn't bow down too, but Mordecai was specifically at the king's gate consistently because that was his job. So, wow. So now, Haman goes to King Ahasuerus, and he says, there's a certain people scattered abroad and dispersed among the people in all the provinces of thy kingdom. Their laws are different from all the people. They don't keep the king's law. Therefore, it is not for the king's profit to suffer them. So it's like, you're in no profit to keep these people around. Here's Haman. He does not know that Queen Esther is Jewish, and and Queen Esther's Jewish, and King Ahasuerus loves him some Esther, okay? If it please the king, let it be written that they may be destroyed, and I will pay 10,000 talents of silver to the hands of those that have the charge of the business to bring it to the king's treasuries. And the king took his ring from his hand and gave it to Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the Jews' enemy. So here we go. Now we see the pot stirred here. So now it's like, wow. So Esther, Queen Vashti, decides, I'm not going to go and be your little trophy wife and get displayed among all your little drunk friends. And Esther happens to go in and win the king's favor. Mordecai, who's been working for the king, is still holding true to not bowing down to anyone but God of heaven. And now Haman is mad and he wants to get rid of all the Jews. So that means Queen Esther would need to be killed, right? So moving forward, Um, Mordecai gets word of it. He rents his clothes. He rips his clothes. He covers himself in ashes and sackcloth. And he's just obviously very upset by this decree that's gone out that the Jews are going to be destroyed, and they're going to be paid to be destroyed. So now Mordecai gives this. So Queen Esther sees Mordecai outside, or she hears about him being outside, being perplexed, being in distress. And she's like, what's going on? What's happening? Why is he being like this? And then he tells her what happened. Mordecai told him of all that happened, to the sum of the money that Haman promised to pay the king's treasury. So the king's treasury was going to get paid, to destroy them. And he gave him a copy of the decree that was given at Shushan to destroy them. And he gave it to show to Esther and declare to her and to charge her that she should go to the king, make supplication unto him, and to make requests before him for her people. So now I'm reading from chapter 4 of Esther, verses 7 and 8. So now, scrolling down, Esther spoke unto Haddock and gave him the commandment to go back to Mordecai. So here we go. Basically, so Esther gets word of it, jumping down. Mordecai and Esther have a few connections between one of her servants she sent back and forth. And Mordecai said to Esther, this is the verse I've been trying to get to for about 11 minutes here. Mordecai commanded to answer Esther, think not with thyself that thou shalt escape in the king's house more than all the Jews. For if you altogether hold your peace at this time, then shall their enlargement and deliverance arise to the Jews from another place, but thou and thy father's house shall be destroyed. And who knoweth whether thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this? Whether thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this. You know, we are given so many opportunities to make change, and we don't grasp them. We just kind of let it roll off. We don't pay attention to it. And we think we're going to escape the negative consequences of whatever it is. If it's in your kid's school, if it's in your job, if it's in your home, if it's within yourself. We're given so many opportunities to grow, and yet so oftentimes we don't seize those opportunities and we miss blessings. Mordecai he's a good uncle. He let her know, listen, don't think you're going to be safe up there sitting in your palace. You are Jewish, and ultimately you will suffer at the hand of the sword too. So you better go on in there and talk to your hubby. But you know, back in that day, you couldn't approach the king unless you were called. So she knew that, and she said, okay, we got to fast and we got to pray through this one. So she calls for a 3-day fast, no food, no water. I think that's what she said. She bade them. She said, I will fast. She said, fast with me, neither eat nor drink. So I'm jumping down. I'm sorry. I'm not telling you guys where I'm at. So I'm in chapter 4 of Esther, verse 16. Esther bade her person to return to Mordecai. Verse 16 says, go gather all the Jews that are present in Shushan and fast ye for me. So this is important. Don't think you have to do it all alone. You can call upon your peoples too. Fast ye for me, neither eat nor drink day or night. I also am my maidens. Her maidens are probably like, hold on a second. They're not Jewish. You're going to make us fast and not eat or drink for 3 days? Of course, they did whatever she said. She was the queen. My maidens will fast likewise, and so will I go into the king, which is not according to the law. And if I perish, I perish. You know, there's oh man, I wish I knew what it says, but my husband has this quote that's basically like, it's not worth it if you're not willing to die for it. You know, sometimes you have to know that when something really is of value, when something is of real importance, you're going to do what you got to do, even if it means risking your own life. It's powerful. It's a powerful quote. I'm going to find it one day and post it in the comments of this. So Mordecai went his way and did according to that all Esther had commanded him. And then on the third, so after the fast is over, I'll jump right into that story. I won't read the verses that go with it, but you should read it. It's the book of Esther. It's a powerful book. It's a powerful read. It's really exciting, especially, of course, always pray before you read. And it just really opens your mind to receive like the power that is behind the word of God. And so she calls for a feast. She says she goes to the king and she goes to the king After her time is up, her fasting time is up, and he puts out his scepter that she can come in. So she made it through. He did not, because she could have went to the king, and if he would have declined her approach and not allowed her to come in and said, you disrespected, I didn't call for you, she could have lost her life. That's why she said, if I perish, I perish. And so he let her come, and she obtained favor in his sight. The king held out to Esther his golden scepter. This is chapter 5, verse 2. He held out to Esther his golden scepter that was in his hand. So Esther drew near and touched the top of the scepter. Then said the king unto her, what wilt thou, Queen Esther? What is thy request? And it shall be given thee to half of the kingdom. That's a bad mamma jamma. He loves her so he loves him some Esther. That's a good woman right there, right? And Esther answered, if it seems good unto the king, let the king and Haman come this day to the banquet that I have prepared for him. So Haman's a little excited. He's feeling like he's going to be honored by the queen. He's feeling like he's the right-hand man to the king. So he's feeling really good, and he's feeling really confident about things. He doesn't know that Esther is about to lay out his plan. So they have their first little feast, and then she says, come back the next day. And the next day, during that feast, she reveals to the king. She falls down at the king's feet, and she reveals to him what Haman's plan is, and she reveals to the king that she's a Jew too, and it means that she must die. Whoo! The king got hot. Oh, I don't know if she fell down at his feet, but then Haman fell down at her feet asking for mercy. And the king says, what are you going to do? Throw yourself on my wife too? Oh man, where's that part at? And so, yeah, so Esther, well, basically that's what happened. And so here we are. Let's see where are the king's scribes. Oh, okay. So this is where she tells him in chapter 7, she tells him, if I found favor in thy sight, if it please the king, let my life be given me at my petition and my people at my request. For we are sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, to be slain, and to perish. But if we had been sold for bondmen and bondwomen, I would have held my tongue, although the enemy could not countervail the king's damage. Then King Ahasuerus answered and said to Esther, the queen, who is he and where is he that does presume in his heart to do so? So he's like, who's trying to kill you and your people? And Esther said, the adversary and enemy is this wicked Haman. Then Haman was afraid before the king and the queen. The king, arising from the banquet of wine in his wrath, went up to the palace garden, and Haman stood up to make request for his life to Esther the queen, for he saw that there was an evil determined against him by the king. Then the king returned out of the palace garden to the place of the banquet of wine, and Haman was fallen upon the bed whereon Esther was. And the king then said the king, will he force the queen also before me in this house? As a word went out of the king's mouth, they covered Haman's face. Whoo! Listen, you can't do dirt. You can't get away with trying to be sneaky and grimy. Even if you don't receive the consequences of it now, you just can't get away with it. It might seem like you're getting away with it, but eventually what happens in the dark is going to come forth to light. And if you have bad intentions on doing something to somebody, just don't do it. It's just not worth it. Get in a relationship with God. Check your motives. Check your heart. Clean all that up. God is not out to smite people and to hurt people. But if you're dead set on doing wrong, whatsoever a man reaps, whatever a man soweth, that he will reap. Like, you're going to reap. And it's not going to be at God's hands. It's going to be at the hands of other wicked people who are going to come back at you. You just don't, I don't know. I can't really say like whose hand it's going to come from, but I just know that you can't do wicked and it not come back to you. So anyways, so there you have it. Queen Esther, she was a bad mamma jamma. She took the opportunity. She seized it. She fought for her people. She was faced with a conflict, and she arose from that conflict, and she did what she had to do. But she did, I think one thing you have to remember that she did, especially as well, is that she prayed and she fasted. She didn't just go and run to the king. She took a little time. She prayed and she fasted, and she called upon others to pray and fast with her. So Queen Esther is who we're shining the spotlight on today for our Women's Day. I pray that you received a blessing. I know it was a little bit choppy, but nonetheless, we got through it. And ultimately, Mordecai was elevated in the king's palace. And so now you had Queen Esther and Mordecai both elevated in the king's palace. So good comes to you when you build your relationship with God and you put him first. There is nothing to be said. And you're going to experience conflict. You're going to experience pain. We live in a fallen world. We live in a world that has issues in it. But when you go through life with God, you have a different perspective. You have a different understanding. And you have a different courage, too. The courage that Esther had and knowing who she needed to have on her side to be able to go through this was powerful. She trusted and relied upon God, and she moved in action by faith, and God showed himself victorious in her life. Isn't that awesome? He wants to do all of that for us. So this is specifically because we women, it's Women's Day, we women have such a great role to play in how things pan out in not only our lives, but those around us, whether it be in our home, work, our friendships, whatever space that we occupy in someone's life. We have power to be a blessing to them, and we need to utilize it to the highest capacity that we can. And we can do that when we develop a deep and strong relationship with God. So God bless you all. Thank you for tuning in to Morning Flame, and I hope to see you again soon.